President-elect Donald Trump is at Mar-a-Lago today trying to complete his cabinet picks after a string of controversial choices here recently. His pick for Attorney General is raising perhaps the most eyebrows. Florida Republican Matt Gaetz could soon be in charge of the Justice Department, an agency that he's long been critical of as well as the target of. But choosing a cabinet member is one thing. Confirmation, of course, is another. And some of Trump's selections could set the stage for some Senate confirmation fights, even with Republicans in control. CNN's Kristen Holmes is live for us now in West Palm Beach, Florida. Kristen, how is Trump's team responding to this blowback? Not exactly arms wide open from his own party.
Well, Brianna, they've already moved on. They have meetings today going over who is going to be their pick for a number of other positions like Treasury, like Energy. These are things that they're trying to get out as quickly as possible. I do think we're going to have some new names as early as tonight. But when it comes to that blowback, one, I was told that they expected it. They were not 100% sure that everyone was going to come out in any way and support Matt Gaetz or Tulsi Gabbard for that matter. That instead, they believed that this was Donald Trump's mandate to deliver on some of the promises that he said that he was going to deliver on, like completely dismantling the Department of Justice. And Donald Trump thought that Matt Gaetz was the right person to do it. Now, I have spoken to a number of his advisors who say that they're clear-eyed on the prospect that Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard might not be confirmed, that they understand that they're going to do everything they can to get them confirmed, but that they also understand that this process, this is just the beginning of the nomination process, and nobody is kind of in disillusionment that there was going to be some pushback or blowback to these particular candidates. And just to give one example, someone told me that they were very much waiting for the meltdown, and then they saw it and watched it unfold. So this idea that Donald Trump's team wasn't expecting it, they knew exactly what they were doing when they made this decision. And the other thing to point out here, there's a lot of speculation as to Donald Trump going rogue. Did he make these decisions outside of his normal transition process? Well, he certainly did, in terms of Matt Gaetz himself was not on any short list. He hadn't been part of the parade of lawyers that we were told were brought in to sit for an interview with Donald Trump. But when it comes to his team around him, he was with some of his top advisors on the plane yesterday when all of this unfolded. And that includes his chief of staff, Susie Wiles. They were in these conversations. They walked through what it would look like, what the reaction would be, and then they still decided to announce it as he was landing back in Florida. So that's just something to keep in mind with all this speculation that Donald Trump wasn't prepared or the team wasn't aware of how controversial Gaetz was. Clearly, they were at this point aware of it and have been kind of relishing in it a little bit as they've watched the coverage unfold.
Yeah, no doubt. There's still some holes in the president-elect's lineup.
That's right, Brianna. And some of the big ones that we're looking for are Treasury, education, energy. These are all big jobs. Transportation hasn't been done yet, that they're having current conversations over. Now, I don't have any insight into what that meeting looks like yet. I'm trying to reach people who have been sitting through that meeting, having these conversations. But yet, we still don't know how this is going to unfold. And just a reminder of what these meetings look like, Donald Trump is essentially presented with the cabinet position, a series of people who are on a short list that then go up on the big screens. They have several TV screens where he watches them. He sees their bio. He sees how they've talked about him in the past. He sees their old tweets. They want him to be under no surprises in this situation, and they want him to be aware of who these candidates are. I would, again, and this is with a little bit of hedging, expect that we're going to hear more announcements as early as tonight, Brianna.
All right, we'll be looking for that. Kristen Holmes, thank you. Boris?
If he's confirmed by the Senate, Gaetz would lead the very department that pursued a years-long sex trafficking investigation against him. Separately in the House, Democrats are now pushing for the release of an ethics report on the former congressman, just as the panel was set to vote this week on whether or not to release it. Let's discuss with national political reporter for The Bulwark and fellow Florida man, Mark Caputo. Mark, great to see you as always. First, you covered the investigation into Matt Gaetz and allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use closely. Where did those investigations wind up?
Nowhere as it regards Matt Gaetz. It was Kafkaesque toward the end because it just kept dragging on. And eventually the Department of Justice, after 2 years, decided, okay, we're going to throw in the towel. Why? They didn't really have any hard evidence. And the evidence they had by way of witness testimony against him came from compromised witnesses. One of them was former tax collector in elected position in Central Florida, who, sorry for I set my alarm, I apologize for that, who was an old friend of Matt Gaetz, had been incarcerated and had been a one-man crime wave and was totally unreliable. Among the things that he went to prison for was falsely smearing a rival as a pedophile. And now he's saying, oh, well, Matt Gaetz is the pedophile. Well, it was that guy. The other person was the alleged victim, who apparently gave contradictory statements, both to federal investigators, according to sources of ours, as well as in a civil-related matter that had recently unfolded. Those two things stacked together just led the Justice Department to say, well, we have no real hard evidence, and the evidence by way of the witnesses isn't very credible, so they threw in the towel. What was remarkable is that it took about 2 years for them to do this.
Yeah, and Mark, you're also getting some insight into how Trump and his team think Gaetz might fare during a confirmation process. What are you hearing about that?
Well, they knew, as Kristen had reported just a moment ago, they knew that this would be a kind of a bonfire, and it is. But Matt Gaetz is among the smartest, most eloquent MAGA spokespeople out there. Donald Trump really likes Matt Gaetz. He really trusts him. He likes the way Matt Gaetz defends and advances him, not only on television, but in rallies. And if you look at Matt Gaetz in congressional hearings, he's built a reputation of being one of the members of Congress who's best at questioning witnesses, boxing them in, and being able to use his time on the stand, so to speak, or up on the dais. Now, he's never really been on the other side of this in a confirmation process, but he was a debate club champ. He does have a quick acid tongue. That's part of the reason some people don't really like him. And whether he makes it through the confirmation process or not, everyone in Trump's team believes that this is at least going to make pretty spectacular television. It might be not safe for work television, but it's going to make for must-watch TV.
You also write that in Trump's mind, the Attorney General is the most important position. Why?
Yeah. Think about when Trump first took office, he appointed Jeff Sessions, and Sessions soon appointed a special counsel because of the way in which Trump had reacted to the FBI director investigating him over the Russia matter, or as Trump calls it, I'm not calling this myself, the Russia hoax. And that triggered just a series of problems for Donald Trump, the Mueller investigation, which just saddled his administration for 2 years. And Trump fumed that he didn't have a loyal attorney general and one who didn't have the guts to just say, look, go pound sand. This is nothing here, nothing to see here, no special counsel. Matt Gaetz is that guy. He's not going to be the one who, if he's attorney general, is going to appoint any special counsels. He's not going to let these things move forward. And like Trump, as someone who's been investigated by the Justice Department, Matt Gaetz has a bone to pick with them. And as one of the sources whom I spoke to, who was familiar with the transition process, had said, is all these other lawyers who applied to be attorney general sort of approach this as a judicial appointment. And they had these high-minded discussions about the Constitution and law and all these other things. And only Gaetz really understood Donald Trump and said, look, I'm here to cut effing heads. That's not a direct quote, but that's them paraphrasing his mentality, his mindset, and the deliverable that he was promised. And Donald Trump knew that and basically said, deal, I buy, you're my guy.
Yeah. Mark, quickly, before we go, I always joke whenever you come on, fellow Florida man, because we met when I was working in Miami, and we sort of enjoy the weird politics of Florida. What does it tell you that so many folks in the in the incoming Trump administration, between Susie Wiles, Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, and now potentially Matt Gaetz, what does it tell you that so many of them are from the Sunshine State?
Florida used to be a swing state and became a red state, in part because of the success of the Republican Party of Florida here, the consultants, the people who understood data, persuasion, and turnout. So this is sort of where MAGA was sort of born ahead of time and was just ready for the right leader in Donald Trump. These are people who know how to win elections, and you just saw here in this last election that they showed that in spades. And as this being Donald Trump's newly adopted home, like any Florida man, or a lot of Florida men, he happened to be from New York, he got to know and sort of went native a lot of the Republicans here, and learned that he not only trusted them and liked them, but thought they were among the most competent. That's why you're seeing Rubio, Mike Waltz, I said Don Gaetz, that's Matt Gaetz' father, is about to be a state senator again, Matt Gaetz, and a whole host of others. So I'm not sure if there are any more Florida men left in the wing or Florida women, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are.
Mark Caputo, always great to get your perspective. Thanks so much for being with us.